Welcome, dear listeners, to a tale that will transport you through the mists of time, to an age when gods walked among mortals and the very foundations of Western civilization were being laid. Tonight, we embark on an extraordinary journey to ancient Greece, where heroes forged legends, philosophers questioned the nature of existence, and a remarkable people created a legacy that still shapes our world today. Close your eyes. Settle into your most comfortable position, and let your imagination carry you across the wine-dark seas to a land of marble temples, olive groves, and stories that have echoed through millennia. This is the story of how Greek civilization began, a tale of courage, wisdom, and the eternal human quest for meaning. But before we begin, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell, so you never miss these nightly journeys into history's most captivating stories. Now let us travel back over 3,000 years to witness the dawn of one of humanity's greatest civilizations. In the beginning, there was only the endless expanse of the Aegean Sea, its azure waters reflecting the boundless sky above. The year was approximately 3000 BCE, and the Mediterranean world was a tapestry of scattered tribes, each struggling to carve out their place in an uncertain world. But among the rocky islands and mountainous peninsulas of what would one day be called Greece, something extraordinary was stirring. The first whispers of a civilization that would change the course of human history. Picture, if you will, a small fishing village nestled along the coast of what is now the Peloponnese. The morning sun casts long shadows across the pebbled beach as fishermen drag their nets from the sea, their bronze-tanned hands glistening with salt water. Among them walks a young man named Theron, whose keen eyes notice something unusual washing ashore with the tide. It is a piece of pottery, unlike anything he has ever seen. The clay is fine, almost delicate, and decorated with intricate spirals and geometric patterns that seem to dance in the morning light. This fragment, unknown to Theron, comes from the Cycladic Islands, where skilled artisans have been perfecting their craft for generations. It represents the first threads of what will become the rich tapestry of Greek culture. Theron turns the pottery shard over in his weathered hands, marveling at its beauty. His grandfather, Alexios, approaches with the slow, measured steps of a man who has seen many seasons come and go. The old fisherman's eyes, clouded with age but still sharp with wisdom, examine the artifact with interest. This comes from far across the waters. "My boy," Alexios murmurs, his voice carrying the weight of accumulated knowledge. "From islands where men have learned to shape clay as we shape our nets, with patience and skill passed down through generations." The old man's words plant a seed in Theron's mind. For the first time, he begins to understand that their small village is part of something larger, a network of communities scattered across the Aegean, each contributing their own skills and knowledge to a growing web of civilization. As the days pass, more evidence of this broader world washes ashore. Bronze tools, their edges still sharp despite their journey across the waves. Obsidian blades from the volcanic island of Melos, prized for their razor-like sharpness. And always, more pottery, each piece telling a story of distant hands and foreign hearths. Theron becomes obsessed with these treasures from the sea. He begins to collect them, studying their patterns and trying to understand their origins. His fellow villagers think him odd at first, but gradually they too begin to see the value in these foreign objects. The bronze tools are superior to their own stone implements. The pottery techniques could improve their own crude vessels. One evening, as the sun sets over the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Theron makes a decision that will echo through generations. He announces to the village elders that he intends to build a boat, not a simple fishing vessel, but a craft capable of crossing the open sea to find the source of these wondrous objects. The elders are skeptical. The sea is dangerous, they warn. Many who venture beyond the sight of land never return. But Theron's passion is infectious. and gradually he wins over a small group of followers. Among them is Minoan, a young woman whose skill with the loom has made her the finest weaver in the village, and Demetrios, a metalworker whose bronze spearheads are sought after by neighboring communities. Through the long winter months, they work on their vessel, using techniques learned from generations of fishermen, but adapting them for longer voyages. They craft a boat with a deep hull and a sturdy mast. They weave sails from Minoan's finest cloth and forge bronze, fittings from Demetrios' workshop. As spring arrives and the seas calm, their preparations are complete. The entire village gathers on the beach to see them off. Children run alongside the boat as it's pushed into the surf, their excited voices mixing with the crash of waves. Elderly women offer prayers to Poseidon, the god of the sea. Though his name is not yet known by that title, he is simply the powerful spirit who rules the waters. The boat cuts through the morning swells, its sail billowing with the favorable wind. Behind them, their village grows smaller until it disappears entirely, leaving only the endless blue of the Aegean stretching in all directions. For the first time in their lives, these Bronze Age Greeks are truly alone with the sea. Days pass in a rhythm of wind and wave. They navigate by the stars, using knowledge passed down from their ancestors who first learned to read the night sky. The constellation they call the Great Bear guides them north, while the bright star they know as the Shepherd's Light points the way east. On the fourth day, a smudge appears on the horizon. As they draw closer, it resolves into an island, not the barren rock they expected, but a place of surprising beauty. Terraced hillsides covered in olive trees descend to a natural harbor where other boats are moored. Smoke rises from numerous hearths, and they can see people moving about what appears to be a substantial settlement. This is their first glimpse of Cycladic civilization, a culture that has been developing for over 1,000 years in isolation among the islands. As they beach their boat, they are greeted by curious islanders whose appearance is both familiar and foreign. They share the same Mediterranean features as Theron's people, but their clothing is more sophisticated, their tools more refined. The island's leader, a dignified man named Nikos, welcomes them with a hospitality that will become legendary among the Greeks. He invites them to share his hearth and hear the stories of his people. Through gestures and the few words their languages share, they begin to communicate. Nikos tells them of the great workshops, where master potters create vessels of unprecedented beauty. He speaks of traders who sail as far as Anatolia and Egypt, bringing back exotic goods and new ideas. He describes a world where communities specialize in different crafts, some islands known for their marble, others for their bronze work, still others for their skilled sailors. For Theron and his companions, this is a revelation. They have always thought of their village as complete unto itself, but now they see the possibility of something greater, a network of communities, each contributing their strengths to a common prosperity. They spend weeks on the island, learning new techniques and forming friendships that will last lifetimes. Minoan studies with the island's weavers, learning to create patterns of incredible complexity. Demetrios works alongside bronzesmiths who show him how to create alloys of unprecedented strength. Theron himself learns the art of navigation, studying charts carved on stone tablets that show the locations of dozens of islands and the best routes between them. When they finally prepare to return home, their boat is laden with more than trade goods. They carry new ideas, new techniques, and most importantly, a new vision of what their people might become. The pottery shard that first captured Theron's imagination seems almost crude now compared to the masterpieces they've seen created. The return journey is swifter, aided by favorable winds and their newfound knowledge of the sea. When they beach their boat on the familiar pebbles of their home shore, the entire village gathers to hear their tales. Children sit wide-eyed as Theron describes islands, where marble gleams like snow and workshops ring with the sound of bronze hammers. But it is not just stories they bring back. The new techniques they've learned begin to transform their community. Minoan teaches other women to create textiles of unprecedented beauty. Demetrios shares his knowledge of advanced metallurgy. And soon their bronze work is sought after by neighboring villages. Most importantly, they bring back the concept of trade, the idea that communities can prosper not just through their own efforts, but by exchanging goods and knowledge with distant neighbors. Within a generation, their small fishing village has become a trading port, with boats arriving regularly from across the Aegean. This transformation is not unique to Theron's village. Across the Greek world, similar awakenings are taking place. On the island of Crete, a sophisticated civilization is emerging that will one day be known as Minoan. In the Peloponnese, communities are beginning to organize into larger political units. In the north, tribes are learning to work bronze and build fortified settlements. The seeds of Greek civilization are being planted, watered by trade, cross-cultural exchange, and the eternal human desire to create something beautiful and lasting. The pottery shard that started it all sits now in a place of honor in Theron's home, a reminder of how the smallest discovery can change the course of history. As night falls over the Aegean, and the stars emerge in their eternal patterns, the stage is set for the next chapter in this great story. The Bronze Age Greeks have taken their first steps toward becoming the people who will give the world democracy, philosophy, and some of its greatest art and literature. But that transformation will not come easily. Ahead lie centuries of struggle, conquest, and rebirth. Civilizations will rise and fall. Heroes will be born and legends created, and through it all, the Greek spirit, that unique combination of curiosity, courage, and creativity, will continue to evolve. 500 years have passed since Theron's first voyage across the Aegean, and the world has transformed beyond recognition. The scattered fishing villages of the Bronze Age have given way to sophisticated settlements, and nowhere is this transformation more evident than on the island of Crete, where a civilization of unprecedented splendor has emerged from the wine-dark sea. In the great palace of Knossos, as the morning sun streams through painted columns and illuminates frescoes of leaping dolphins and charging bulls, a young priestess named Ariadne prepares for the most important ceremony of her life. Today, she will participate in the sacred bull-leaping ritual that lies at the heart of Minoan religion, a dangerous dance between human and beast that symbolizes the eternal struggle between civilization and the wild forces of nature. Ariadne moves through corridors that seem to stretch endlessly, their walls adorned with scenes of marine life so vivid they appear to swim in the flickering torchlight. This is the famous labyrinth of Knossos, though not the monster-haunted maze of later legend, but rather a complex of over 1,000 rooms that serves as the administrative and religious center of Minoan civilization. The palace is a marvel of Bronze Age engineering. Multi-story buildings rise around central courtyards, connected by grand staircases and sophisticated drainage systems. Light wells bring natural illumination to the deepest chambers, while elaborate ventilation systems keep the air fresh even in the hottest summer months. It is a testament to the Minoan genius for combining beauty with functionality. As Ariadne makes her way to the central court where the ceremony will take place, she passes through rooms that tell the story of Minoan prosperity. Storerooms filled with enormous clay jars called pithoi contain olive oil, wine, and grain from across the Mediterranean. Workshops buzz with activity as artisans create the luxury goods that have made Crete famous throughout the ancient world. Delicate gold jewelry, intricate ivory carvings, and pottery so fine it seems almost translucent. The Minoans have become the great traders of the Bronze Age world. Their ships, with their distinctive high prows and square sails, are familiar sights in ports from Egypt to Anatolia. They carry not just goods, but ideas spreading Minoan artistic styles, religious concepts, and technological innovations throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. In the palace archives, Scribes work with a writing system that scholars of later ages will call Linear A, recording the complex transactions that keep this maritime empire functioning. They track shipments of copper from Cyprus, tin from distant lands, amber from the far north, and ivory from Africa. The Minoans have created the first truly international economy, built on their mastery of the sea. But it is not just material prosperity that defines Minoan civilization. These are a people who have learned to live in harmony with their environment, creating a society that values beauty, peace, and the sacred feminine. Unlike the warrior cultures that dominate much of the Bronze Age world, Minoan art rarely depicts warfare or violence. Instead, their frescoes show scenes of nature, religious ceremonies, and the joyful activities of daily life. Ariadne embodies this Minoan ideal. As a priestess of the great goddess, the mother deity who rules over fertility, nature, and the mysteries of life and death, she represents the spiritual heart of her civilization. Her elaborate costume, with its tight bodice and flounced skirt, is decorated with symbols of her sacred office: snakes that represent the earth's power, birds that symbolize the heavens, and the double axe that is the most sacred symbol of Minoan religion. The bull leaping ceremony she is about to perform is more than mere spectacle. It is a religious ritual that connects the Minoans to the cosmic forces that govern their world. The bull represents the raw power of nature earthquakes that shake their island home, the storms that can destroy their ships, the volcanic forces that created their land. By dancing with the bull, by grasping its horns and vaulting over its back, the performers demonstrate humanity's ability to work with these forces rather than simply being overwhelmed by them. As Ariadne enters the great central court, she sees that hundreds of spectators have gathered for the ceremony. Nobles in their finest clothing occupy the raised galleries, while common people crowd the ground level. Visitors from across the Mediterranean have come to witness this uniquely Minoan spectacle. Egyptian ambassadors with their shaved heads and fine linen robes, bearded Mesopotamian merchants, and bronze-skinned traders from the distant shores of Spain. The court itself is a masterpiece of architectural design. Its precise proportions and orientation to the cardinal directions reflect the Minoan understanding of sacred geometry. The floor is paved with gypsum slabs that gleam like mirrors, while the walls are decorated with frescoes showing previous bull leaping ceremonies, creating a sense of continuity with the past. At the center of the court, a magnificent bull waits, not the monstrous creature of later Greek myth, but a real animal carefully selected and trained for this sacred purpose. Its coat gleams like polished bronze, and its horns have been gilded for the ceremony. Despite its beauty, this is a dangerous beast, weighing nearly a ton and possessing the strength to kill with a single blow. Ariadne is joined by two other performers, a young man named Theseus, though this is not the hero of later legend, but a common Minoan name meaning he who sets down, and another priestess called Europa. Together, they represent the three aspects of the sacred maiden, youth, and mother that are central to Minoan religion. The ceremony begins with music, the haunting sound of Minoan lyres and the rhythmic beating of drums made from bull hide. Dancers in elaborate costumes perform around the edges of the court, their movements telling the story of the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth that governs all existence. As the music reaches its crescendo, the three performers approach the bull. This is the moment of greatest danger, requiring perfect timing, absolute courage, and complete trust in their training. Ariadne moves first, her bare feet silent on the polished stone. The bull, sensing her approach, lowers its massive head and prepares to charge. What happens next is a display of human skill and courage that takes the breath away. As the bull charges, Ariadne grasps its horns and uses the animal's own momentum to vault over its back in a perfect somersault. For a moment, she seems to fly through the air, her body silhouetted against the blue Cretan sky. Before landing gracefully behind the beast, Theseus and Europa follow, each performing their own variation of the sacred dance. The crowd watches in awed silence as these three young people demonstrate the Minoan ideal of harmony between human intelligence and natural power. This is not conquest or domination, but cooperation, a dance of mutual respect between civilization and the wild. The ceremony concludes with offerings to the great goddess, libations of wine and honey, precious objects thrown into sacred caves, and the ritual blessing of the bull before it is returned to the royal herds. The animal is not sacrificed, for the Minoans believe that all life is sacred and that the gods prefer offerings of beauty and skill to blood and death. As the crowds disperse and the palace returns to its normal rhythms, Ariadne reflects on the deeper meaning of what she has just experienced. The bull leaping ceremony is a metaphor for Minoan civilization itself, a culture that has learned to thrive by working with natural forces rather than against them, by embracing beauty and peace rather than warfare and conquest. But even as she basks in the success of the ceremony, Ariadne is aware of changes stirring in the wider world. To the north, on the Greek mainland, new peoples are arriving, warriors who speak a different language and worship different gods. These Mycenaeans, as they will come to be known, are learning from Minoan civilization, but they are also transforming it, adding their own martial traditions to the peaceful Minoan way of life. The Mycenaeans have already established settlements throughout the Greek mainland, building massive fortresses with walls so thick that later generations will believe they were constructed by giants. Their society is organized around warfare and the glorification of heroic deeds in battle. They worship sky gods rather than earth goddesses, and their art celebrates conquest rather than harmony with nature. Yet they are also deeply influenced by Minoan culture. Mycenaean nobles wear Minoan-style clothing, decorate their palaces with Minoan frescoes, and adopt Minoan religious practices. They are creating a synthesis of cultures that will eventually give birth to classical Greek civilization. This cultural fusion is already evident in the palace of Knossos itself. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that Mycenaean administrators have begun to play important roles in the palace bureaucracy. The linear A script of the Minoans is being supplemented by a new writing system, Linear B, which records an early form of the Greek language. As night falls over Crete, and the palace settles into evening quiet, Ariadne walks through corridors that have witnessed the height of Minoan civilization. The frescoes seem to glow in the lamplight, dolphins leaping through painted waves, priestesses bearing sacred offerings, young men and women dancing in flower-filled meadows. She pauses before a particularly beautiful fresco showing the sacred marriage of the sky god and the earth goddess, a scene that represents the union of opposing forces that creates all life. Unknown to her, this image foreshadows the cultural marriage that is already taking place between her peaceful Minoan world and the warrior culture of the Mycenaean. In the palace workshops, artisans continue their ancient crafts, but they are beginning to incorporate new motifs and techniques learned from their northern neighbors. Minoan pottery now sometimes shows scenes of warfare alongside the traditional nature themes. Bronze workers are learning to create new types of weapons and armor. Even the peaceful bull-leaping ceremony is beginning to take on more aggressive overtones as Mycenaean influence grows. The transformation is gradual, almost imperceptible from day to day, but it is inexorable. The purely Minoan world of Ariadne's childhood is giving way to something new, a hybrid culture that combines Minoan sophistication with Mycenaean dynamism. This fusion will prove to be one of the most creative periods in human history, laying the groundwork for the achievements of classical Greece. Yet there are also signs of instability. The great Minoan trading network is under pressure from new competitors and changing political conditions throughout the Mediterranean. Pirates, possibly including Mycenaean raiders, are making sea travel more dangerous. Natural disasters, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions are taking their toll on Minoan cities. Most ominously, there are reports of a great catastrophe to the north. On the island of Thera, the volcano there has erupted with unprecedented violence, sending ash clouds across the eastern Mediterranean and triggering tsunamis that have devastated coastal communities. Some refugees from Thera have reached Crete with tales of entire cities buried under volcanic ash and waves as tall as mountains. The eruption of Thera marks a turning point in Aegean history. The disaster disrupts trade networks, weakens Minoan naval power, and creates opportunities for the rising Mycenaean civilization to assert its dominance. Within a few generations, the great palace of Knossos will be abandoned, its corridors silent, its frescoes fading in the Mediterranean sun. But the legacy of Minoan civilization will not disappear. The Mycenaeans who inherit the Aegean world will preserve many Minoan traditions, adapting them to their own needs and values. The peaceful goddess religion will merge with warrior sky god worship to create the complex mythology of classical Greece. Minoan artistic techniques will influence Greek art for centuries to come. And the Minoan ideal of harmony between civilization and nature will remain as an undercurrent in Greek thought, surfacing in the philosophy of later thinkers who dream of a golden age when humans lived in peace with the natural world. As Ariadne finally retires to her chambers, she carries with her the memory of the day's ceremony, the moment when she flew through the air above the sacred bowl, suspended between earth and sky, embodying the Minoan vision of humanity's place in the cosmos. She does not know that she is living through the end of an era, that the world she loves is about to be transformed beyond recognition, but perhaps that is for the best. For now, she can simply treasure the beauty of the moment, the perfection of the dance, the harmony between human skill and natural power that defines her civilization. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, but tonight, the Palace of the Bull stands eternal under the Cretan stars, a monument to humanity's endless capacity for creating beauty in an uncertain world. Chapter 3. The Lion Gate and the Warrior Kings. The bronze-shod wheels of the war chariot thunder across the dusty plain of Argos, kicking up clouds that catch the golden light of the late afternoon sun. Behind the reins stands Agamemnon, though not yet the legendary king of Homer's tales, but a young Mycenaean prince whose ambitions burn as bright as the bronze armor that gleams on his powerful frame. This is the 14th century BCE, and the Mycenaean civilization has reached the height of its power, transforming the Greek mainland into a network of fortified citadels, ruled by warrior kings who dream of glory and conquest. The chariot crests a hill, and before Agamemnon spreads the sight that never fails to stir his warrior's heart, the great citadel of Mycenae, its massive walls rising from the rocky outcrop like a crown of stone. The famous Lion Gate, with its heraldic beasts carved in relief above the entrance, stands as a testament to Mycenaean power and ambition. This is more than just a fortress. It is a statement of dominance, a declaration that the age of peaceful Minoan traders has given way to an era of warrior kings. As Agamemnon's chariot approaches the citadel, he reflects on the journey that has brought his people to this moment of supremacy. The Mycenaeans are relative newcomers to the Greek world, descendants of Indo-European tribes who migrated south from the Balkans centuries earlier. They brought with them a warrior culture, a pantheon of sky gods, and most importantly, the horse and chariot that have revolutionized Bronze Age warfare, unlike the Minoans, who built their palaces by the sea and trusted in their naval supremacy for protection. The Mycenaeans have chosen to fortify the high places. Their citadels, built on easily defended hilltops, are surrounded by walls of such massive stones that later Greeks will call them Cyclopean, believing that only giants could have moved such enormous blocks. The Lion Gate itself is a masterpiece of Bronze Age engineering and artistry. The great trilithon, two massive upright stones, supporting a horizontal lintel, frames an entrance wide enough for chariots to pass through. Above the lintel, a triangular relief shows two lions flanking the central column, their powerful forms carved with a skill that rivals the best. Minoan art, this heraldic device serves both as a symbol of royal power and as a protective talisman. For the lion is sacred to the great goddess who, even in this warrior culture, remains a powerful divine force. As Agamemnon passes beneath the Lion Gate, he enters a world that represents the pinnacle of Bronze Age Greek civilization. The citadel of Mycenae is not just a military fortress, but a complex urban center housing thousands of people. Within the massive walls are royal palaces, administrative buildings, workshops, storerooms, and residential quarters for the nobility and their retainers. The palace complex itself is a marvel of Bronze Age architecture, though very different in style from the open, light-filled palaces of Crete. Mycenaean palaces are built around a central hall called a megaron, a rectangular chamber with a circular hearth at its center and a throne for the king along one wall. The megaron of Mycenae is particularly magnificent, its walls decorated with frescoes that show scenes of warfare, hunting, and religious ceremonies, while its floor is covered with elaborate geometric patterns and colored stone. In the throne room, Agamemnon's father, King Atreus, holds court. The king is an imposing figure, his beard streaked with gray, but his arms still powerful from years of wielding sword and spear. Around him gather the nobles of Mycenae, warriors whose bronze armor and gold ornaments speak of wealth won through conquest, merchants who have grown rich from trade, and craftsmen whose skills have made Mycenaean goods prized throughout the Mediterranean. The court of Mycenae is a far cry from the peaceful assemblies of Minoan Crete. Here, the talk is of raids and conquests, of tribute extracted from subject cities, of the eternal struggle for honor and glory that drives Mycenaean society. The walls are hung with weapons, bronze swords with ivory hilts, spears tipped with gleaming points, shields decorated with scenes of battle. Even the drinking cups are made in the shape of animal heads, as if to remind the drinkers that they are predators in a world where only the strong survive. Yet for all their martial focus, the Mycenaeans are not mere barbarians. They have inherited much from Minoan civilization and have added their own innovations to create a culture of remarkable sophistication. Their craftsmen produce works of art that rival anything created in the ancient world. Gold death masks of haunting beauty, intricate ivory carvings, and pottery decorated with scenes of astonishing complexity. This emphasis on individual achievement and personal glory is one of the key differences between Mycenaean and Minoan culture. While the Minoans celebrated collective harmony and the cycles of nature, the Mycenaeans glorify the heroic individual, the warrior who stands alone against impossible odds, the king who builds his legacy through mighty deeds, the craftsman who signs his work with pride. This heroic ideal is reflected in Mycenaean burial practices. While the Minoans buried their dead in simple graves or family tombs, Mycenaean nobles are interred in magnificent tholos tombs, great beehive-shaped chambers, built of carefully fitted stone blocks and covered with earth to form artificial hills. The largest of these, the so-called treasury of Atreus at Mycenae, is a marvel of Bronze Age engineering. Its corbelled dome rising to a height of over 40 feet without the use of mortar or metal clamps. These tombs are filled with grave goods that speak of lives lived in luxury and power. Gold jewelry, bronze weapons, ivory ornaments, and pottery imported from across the Mediterranean. The message is clear. These are not just burial places but monuments to individual achievement, designed to preserve the memory of great deeds for all eternity. Wealth that fills these tombs comes from the extensive trade networks that the Mycenaeans have inherited from the Minoans and expanded through their own military might. Mycenaean merchants and raiders range across the Mediterranean, establishing trading posts and extracting tribute from weaker peoples. Their distinctive stirrup jars, used for transporting olive oil and perfumed unguents, have been found from Sicily to the Levant, testimony to the reach of Mycenaean commerce. But it is not just trade that brings wealth to Mycenae. The Mycenaeans are also raiders and conquerors, using their superior military technology to dominate their neighbors. Their bronze weapons are the finest in the world. Their chariots give them mobility on the battlefield, and their warrior ethos makes them formidable opponents in any conflict. The Linear B. Tablets found in the palace archives reveal the complex administrative system that supports this military machine. Scribes record the allocation of land to nobles in exchange for military service, the production of bronze weapons and armor, the training of chariot crews, and the collection of tribute from subject territories. This is a society organized for war, where every aspect of life serves the ultimate goal of military supremacy. Yet even at the height of their power, the Mycenaeans face challenges that will ultimately prove insurmountable. The Bronze Age world is becoming increasingly unstable, with new peoples migrating from the north and east, disrupting established trade routes and challenging existing power structures. The great Hittite Empire in Anatolia is weakening, creating a power vacuum that draws various groups into conflict. Most ominously, there are reports of mysterious raiders known as the Sea Peoples, a confederation of maritime warriors who are attacking coastal cities throughout the eastern Mediterranean. These raiders use new military technologies, including iron weapons that are superior to bronze, and their tactics are unlike anything the established powers have faced before. The Mycenaeans themselves may be contributing to this instability. Their raids and conquests have created a cycle of violence that is spreading throughout the Mediterranean world. The destruction of Troy, which will become the subject of Homer's great epic, is just one example of the conflicts that are tearing apart the Bronze Age order. As evening falls over Mycenae, and the torches are lit in the great Megaron, Agamemnon listens to the court bards sing of ancient heroes and their mighty deeds. These songs, passed down through generations of oral tradition, preserve the memory of a golden age when gods walked among mortals and heroes performed deeds that echo through eternity. The bards tell of Perseus, who slew the Gorgon Medusa and founded the dynasty that rules Mycenae. They sing of Heracles, whose 12 labors demonstrate the heroic ideal of overcoming impossible challenges through strength and courage. They recount the tale of the Argonauts, who sailed to the ends of the earth in search of the Golden Fleece, representing the Mycenaean spirit of adventure and conquest. These stories are more than mere entertainment. They are the foundation of Mycenaean identity. They teach young warriors the values of courage, honor, and loyalty that hold their society together. They preserve the memory of great deeds and inspire new generations to achieve their own glory. Most importantly, they create a sense of continuity with the past, linking the present generation to the heroes of old. But even as the bards sing of eternal glory, the signs of change are multiplying. The palace archives record increasing difficulties in maintaining trade routes, growing pressure from hostile neighbors, and internal conflicts between rival nobles. The great Mycenaean citadels, which once seemed impregnable, are beginning to show signs of strain. In the workshops of Mycenae, craftsmen are experimenting with a new metal iron that promises to revolutionize warfare and technology. Iron weapons are harder and sharper than bronze, and iron tools are more durable and efficient. But the knowledge of iron working is still limited, and the Mycenaeans have not yet mastered the techniques that will make iron the dominant metal of the next age. The religious life of Mycenae is also undergoing transformation. While the old goddess religion inherited from the Minoans remains important, new gods are gaining prominence. Sky gods like Zeus, who will become the king of the Olympian pantheon, and war gods like Ares, who embody the Mycenaean warrior ideal. These new deities reflect the changing values of Greek society, as the peaceful agricultural concerns of the Bronze Age give way to the heroic ideals of the coming Iron Age. As Agamemnon retires to his chambers in the royal palace, he gazes out over the plain of Argos, where the lights of distant villages twinkle like stars. He dreams of the great expedition he is planning, a massive assault on the wealthy city of Troy that will bring glory to his name and riches to his followers. He does not know that this expedition, if it succeeds, will be one of the last great achievements of Mycenaean civilization. The world is changing, and the Bronze Age order that has dominated the Eastern Mediterranean for over a millennium is coming to an end. New peoples with new technologies and new ideas are challenging the established powers. The great palaces that have been the centers of civilization for centuries will soon be abandoned, their linear archives forgotten, their mighty walls crumbling into ruin. But the legacy of Mycenaean civilization will not disappear entirely. The heroic ideals that drive Agamemnon and his warriors will be preserved in the epic poems of Homer, inspiring future generations of Greeks to achieve their own greatness. The artistic techniques developed by Mycenaean craftsmen will influence Greek art for centuries to come. And the political structures of Mycenaean society, the concept of kingship, the warrior aristocracy, the relationship between ruler and ruled, will provide the foundation for the city-states of classical Greece. The Lion Gate still stands guard over the ruins of Mycenae, its carved lions gazing eternally across the plain of Argos. It serves as a reminder of a time when warrior kings ruled from mighty citadels, when heroes walked the earth, and when the foundations of Western civilization were being laid by bronze-armed warriors who dreamed of immortal glory. In the distance, thunder rumbles across the mountains, and lightning illuminates the peaks where the gods are said to dwell. The storm is coming, and with it, the end of the Bronze Age world. But from its ashes will rise something new, a civilization that will combine the best of what came before with innovations that will change the world forever. Chapter 4. The Dark Age and the Wandering Bards. The great citadel of Mycenae stands silent under a gray sky, its massive walls cracked and overgrown with wild vines. The Lion Gate, once the proud entrance to a mighty kingdom, now opens onto empty courtyards where weeds push through broken paving stones. The year is approximately 1100 BCE, and the Bronze Age world has collapsed with a suddenness that still echoes in the folk memories of the scattered survivors. In the ruins of what was once the royal Megaron, an old man sits beside a small fire, his weathered hands moving across the strings of a lyre that has seen better days. This is Demodocus, one of the last of the palace bards, and in his memory lie the songs and stories of a vanished world. Around him gather a handful of listeners, refugees, wanderers, and the few inhabitants of the nearby village who still remember when Mycenae was the center of a great kingdom. The collapse came not with a single catastrophic blow, but like a slow-moving avalanche that gathered momentum until it swept away everything in its path. The Sea Peoples, those mysterious raiders from the north and west, had struck the final blow against the weakened Bronze Age kingdoms. But the rot had set in long before their ships appeared on the horizon. Trade routes that had connected the Mediterranean world for centuries were disrupted by warfare and piracy. The complex administrative systems that had managed the great palaces could not adapt to rapidly changing conditions. Internal conflicts between rival nobles weakened the kingdoms from within, while external pressures mounted from all directions. The end, when it came, was swift and brutal. Palace after palace was burned and abandoned. The linear B script, used for centuries to record the transactions of Bronze Age bureaucracy, was forgotten almost overnight. The great Tholos tombs were looted by desperate survivors seeking anything of value. Within a generation, a civilization that had dominated the Eastern Mediterranean for half a millennium had virtually disappeared. Demodocus remembers those final days. though he was just a young apprentice bard when the last king of Mycenae fled the citadel with his remaining followers. The old bard's voice, cracked with age but still strong, rises in the ancient melodies as he sings of heroes and kings, of golden palaces and mighty deeds, of a time when gods walked among mortals and the world was young. Sing, muse of Achilles' rage, he begins, his fingers finding the familiar patterns on the lyre strings. Black and murderous, that cost the Greeks incalculable pain, pitched countless souls of heroes into Hades' dark, and left their bodies to rot as feasts for dogs and birds. The words are not yet the polished verses that Homer will create centuries later, but they contain the seeds of that great epic. In the oral tradition of the wandering bards, the stories of the Trojan War and its heroes are being preserved, refined, and transformed. Each telling adds new details, new interpretations, new layers of meaning that will eventually crystallize into the Iliad and Odyssey. But Demodocus sings not just of ancient heroes. He also tells the stories of more recent times, the fall of the great palaces, the wanderings of displaced peoples, the struggles of communities trying to rebuild in the aftermath of collapse. These are the dark tales of the Dark Age, stories of loss and survival that will shape Greek consciousness for generations to come. Around the fire, his listeners lean forward to catch every word. There's Penthesilea, a young woman whose grandmother was a priestess in the palace of Pylos before it fell to raiders. Her family fled north into the mountains, where they joined other refugees in establishing a small farming community. She has never seen a great palace or a Tholos tomb, but through Demodocus's songs, she can imagine the splendor of the lost world. Beside her sits Odysseus, not the legendary hero, but a young man named after him, as many children of this generation are named after the heroes of old. His father was a bronzesmith who lost his livelihood when the palace workshops closed and the demand for luxury goods disappeared. Now the family scratches out a living as farmers, their bronze working skills almost forgotten. The third listener is Nestor, an elderly man who actually lived through the collapse. As a child, he witnessed the burning of Pylos and the flight of its inhabitants. He has spent his life wandering from community to community, carrying news and stories, helping to maintain the fragile connections between the scattered settlements that are all that remain of Mycenaean civilization. These three represent the different ways that Greek society is adapting to the post-collapse world. Some, like Penthesilea's family, have retreated into isolated agricultural communities, turning their backs on the wider world and focusing on simple survival. Others, like Odysseus's family, are trying to preserve the skills and knowledge of the Bronze Age while adapting to new circumstances. Still others, like Nestor, have become wanderers, maintaining the networks of communication and exchange that keep Greek culture alive. The Dark Age is not uniformly dark. While the great palaces have fallen and the complex Bronze Age civilization has collapsed, the Greek people have not disappeared. They have adapted, survived, and in some ways, they are creating something new. The rigid hierarchies of the palace system have given way to more flexible social structures. The complex bureaucracies of the Bronze Age have been replaced by simpler, more democratic forms of organization dot in the mountains of Arcadia. Small communities of shepherds and farmers are developing new forms of governance, based on councils of elders and assemblies of free men. These are the seeds of the democratic institutions that will flourish in classical Greece. Without the overwhelming power of the palace kings, ordinary people are learning to govern themselves. On the islands of the Aegean, maritime communities are slowly rebuilding their trading networks. The great merchant fleets of the Bronze Age are gone, but small boats still carry goods and news between the islands. These traders are developing new routes and new relationships, laying the groundwork for the commercial revival that will come in later centuries dot in the workshops of surviving communities. Craftsmen are experimenting with new techniques and materials, The knowledge of bronze working has not been entirely lost, but it is being supplemented by new skills. Most importantly, the secrets of iron working are spreading throughout the Greek world. Iron tools and weapons are cheaper to produce than bronze, and iron ore is more widely available than the copper and tin needed for bronze dot. This technological shift is having profound social consequences. Bronze weapons were expensive and difficult to make, which meant that only the wealthy elite could afford them. This helped to maintain the rigid social hierarchies of the Bronze Age. Iron weapons, however, can be produced more cheaply and in greater quantities. This means that ordinary farmers and herders can arm themselves, making them less dependent on aristocratic warriors for protection. The religious life of the Greeks is also undergoing transformation during the Dark Age. The elaborate goddess cults of the Bronze Age, with their complex rituals and palace-based priesthoods, have largely disappeared. In their place, simpler forms of worship are emerging, often centered around natural features like springs, groves, and mountain peaks. The sky gods, who were secondary figures in Bronze Age religion, are becoming more prominent. Zeus, the king of the gods, is emerging as the supreme deity, while other Olympian gods are taking on the characteristics that will define them in classical mythology. These gods are more human-like than their Bronze Age predecessors, reflecting the more individualistic values of post-collapse Greek society. As Demodocus continues his recitation, moving from heroic tales to more recent stories, his listeners begin to understand that they are living through a crucial period in Greek history. The old world has died, but a new one is being born. The songs and stories that the bards preserve are not just entertainment. They are the cultural DNA of the Greek people, carrying forward the values and memories that will shape their future. The bard tells of Hesiod, a farmer poet from Boeotia who has begun to compose new kinds of songs, not just heroic epics, but practical poems about farming and the proper ordering of society. Hesiod's Works and Days speaks to the concerns of ordinary people trying to make a living in the post-collapse world, while his Theogony attempts to organize the chaotic world of Greek mythology into a coherent system. These new forms of poetry reflect the changing nature of Greek society. The heroic epics of the Bronze Age celebrated the deeds of kings and nobles, but Hesiod's poems speak to farmers and craftsmen. They offer practical advice about when to plant and harvest, how to treat one's neighbors, and how to live a good life in a world without kings. The Dark Age is also a time of population movement and cultural mixing. The collapse of the Bronze Age kingdoms has set peoples in motion throughout the eastern Mediterranean. Greeks are migrating to new lands, establishing settlements on the coast of Anatolia and the islands of the eastern Aegean. These migrations will eventually lead to the creation of the Ionian Greek cities that will play such an important role in later Greek history. At the same time, new peoples are arriving in Greece itself. The Dorians, a Greek-speaking people from the north, are settling in the Peloponnese and other regions, bringing with them new dialects, new customs, and new technologies. The interaction between these newcomers and the existing population is creating new forms of Greek culture. The linguistic landscape of Greece is becoming more complex during this period. The unified Mycenaean Greek recorded in Linear B is fragmenting into regional dialects: Ionic, Aeolic, Doric, and others. These dialects will eventually become the literary languages of different regions and genres, with Ionic becoming the language of epic poetry and early philosophy, while Doric becomes associated with choral lyric and certain religious traditions. As the night deepens and the fire burns lower, Demodocus's voice grows softer, but his words carry even more power. He sings of the future he sees coming, a time when the scattered Greek communities will reunite, when new cities will rise to rival the ancient palaces, when Greek traders will once again sail to the ends of the earth. He tells of a vision that came to him in a dream, great gathering of Greeks from all the scattered communities. coming together to compete in athletic contests and honor the gods. This vision will eventually become reality in the Olympic Games, which will serve as a powerful force for Greek unity and cultural identity. The bard also speaks of new forms of writing that are beginning to appear. Phoenician traders have brought with them an alphabetic script that is much simpler than the complex syllabic systems of the Bronze Age. Greek scribes are adapting this alphabet to their own language, creating a writing system that will make literacy accessible to ordinary people rather than just palace bureaucrats. This democratization of writing will have profound consequences for Greek culture. The oral tradition that Demodocus represents will not disappear, but it will be supplemented by written literature. The great epics that have been preserved in the memories of bards will be written down, ensuring their survival for future generations. New forms of literature will emerge that take advantage of the possibilities offered by writing. As dawn approaches and the fire dies to embers, Demodocus concludes his night-long recitation with a song of hope. He sings of the phoenix, the mythical bird that burns itself to death, only to rise again from its own ashes. This, he tells his listeners, is the fate of Greek civilization. It has died in the flames of the Bronze Age collapse, but it will rise again. Transformed and renewed, the three listeners, Penthesilea, Odysseus, and Nestor, take their leave as the sun rises over the ruins of Mycenae. Each carries with them the songs and stories they have heard, and each will pass them on to others in their own communities. This is how Greek culture survives the Dark Age, not through great institutions or written records, but through the memories and voices of ordinary people who refuse to let the past die. Demodocus remains by the cold ashes of his fire, alone with his memories and his lyre. He is one of the last links to the Bronze Age world, but he is also a bridge to the future. In his songs, the heroic past lives on, while the seeds of the classical future are already beginning to sprout. The Dark Age is ending, though few realize it yet. In communities throughout the Greek world, population is beginning to grow again. Trade is slowly reviving. New technologies are spreading. The alphabet is making literacy more widespread. Most importantly, the Greeks are beginning to remember who they are and what they can achieve when they work together. The ruins of Mycenae will remain ruins, overgrown and forgotten for centuries. But the spirit that built those mighty walls, the courage that sent ships across unknown seas, the creativity that produced works of art that still take the breath away, that spirit survives in the songs of wandering bards and the dreams of scattered communities. Soon, new cities will rise. New forms of government will be invented. New kinds of art and literature will flourish. The Greeks will once again become a force in the Mediterranean world. But this time they will create something even greater than what came before. A civilization based not on the power of kings, but on the potential of free citizens. Not on the accumulation of wealth, but on the pursuit of excellence. Not on the glory of conquest, but on the love of wisdom. The Dark Age is ending, and the dawn of classical Greece is about to begin. The morning sun rises over the Bay of Salamis, its golden light dancing on the waves as they lap against the rocky shore of a small island settlement. The year is 750 BCE, and the Greek world is awakening from its long slumber. In the modest stone houses that cluster around the island's natural harbor, the descendants of Bronze Age refugees are stirring to life, unaware that they are about to participate in one of the most revolutionary developments in human history, the birth of the polis, the city-state that will become the foundation of Western political thought. On the highest point of the island, where the morning breeze carries the scent of wild thyme and olive blossoms, stands a simple temple to Athena, goddess of wisdom and warfare. It is here that the island's council of elders meets each month to discuss the affairs of their community. Today's gathering will be different from any that has come before, for they face a crisis that will force them to invent new forms of government, new concepts of citizenship. and new ways of organizing human society. The crisis began 3 days ago, when a ship arrived from the mainland bearing disturbing news. Pirates, not the organized sea peoples of old, but desperate bands of raiders from the northern islands, have been attacking merchant vessels and coastal settlements throughout the region. The traditional response would be to seek protection from a powerful king or warlord, but the age of Bronze Age monarchs is long past. The scattered communities of the Greek world must find new ways to defend themselves. Among those climbing the hill to the temple this morning is Solon, though not the famous Athenian lawgiver of later centuries, but a local farmer whose grandfather fought in the last battles of the Bronze Age collapse. Beside him walks Cleisthenes, a descendant of Mycenaean nobles who has adapted to the new world by becoming a successful trader. Their companion is Pericles, a young man whose family has served as priests of Athena for generations. These three men represent the different elements of post-Dark Age Greek society that are coming together to create something unprecedented. Solon embodies the free farmers who form the backbone of the new communities, men who own their own land, fight their own battles, and refuse to bow to any master. Cleisthenes represents the emerging merchant class, whose trade networks are slowly rebuilding the connections between Greek communities. Pericles speaks for the religious traditions that provide continuity with the past while adapting to present needs. As they enter the sacred precinct of Athena's temple, they join about 50 other men, all the adult male citizens of the island community. This gathering is itself revolutionary, for it includes not just nobles and priests, but farmers, craftsmen, and traders. In the Bronze Age world, such men would never have been consulted about matters of governance. They would have simply obeyed the commands of their king and his aristocratic retainers. The meeting begins with the traditional sacrifices to Athena, but even this ancient ritual reflects the new democratic spirit. Instead of a single priest performing the ceremony while others watch in silence, different members of the community take turns offering prayers and libations. The goddess is asked not just to protect the community, but to grant wisdom to all who participate in its governance. The discussion that follows is unlike anything that has occurred in the Greek world for centuries. Instead of a king announcing his decisions to passive subjects, the assembled citizens engage in genuine debate about the best course of action. Some argue for hiring mercenaries to protect their ships and shores. Others propose forming an alliance with neighboring communities. Still others suggest that they should build their own fleet and take the fight to the pirates. What emerges from this debate is something entirely new: the concept of collective decision-making based on rational discussion rather than royal decree or divine revelation. The citizens of this small island community are inventing democracy, though they don't yet have a war D for what they are creating. They are discovering that a group of free men, discussing issues openly and honestly, can make better decisions than any single ruler. No matter how wise or powerful, the debate continues for hours, with each speaker standing to address the assembly while holding a staff that symbolizes his right to speak without interruption. This practice, borrowed from the heroic assemblies described in epic poetry, ensures that every voice can be heard and every perspective considered. Gradually, a consensus begins to emerge around a radical proposal put forward by young Pericles. "Fellow citizens," he says, using a term that is just beginning to acquire its profound political meaning, "we face a choice that will determine not just our immediate survival, but the kind of community we wish to be. We can seek protection from others and remain dependent, or we can take responsibility for our own defense and remain free." Pericles proposes that the community should indeed build its own fleet, but not just for defense against pirates. He envisions a confederation of island communities, each contributing ships and men to a common force that would patrol the sea lanes and protect legitimate trade. This confederation would be governed not by a single king, but by a council of representatives from each participating community. The proposal is audacious in its scope and revolutionary in its implications. It assumes that free communities can cooperate as equals, that ordinary citizens can be trusted with decisions of war and peace, and that legitimate government derives its authority from the consent of the governed, rather than from divine right or military conquest. After much discussion, the Assembly votes to adopt Pericles' proposal. The vote itself is conducted in a manner that reflects the emerging democratic ethos. Each citizen drops a white or black stone into an urn, and the decision is determined by the majority. This simple procedure embodies profound principles: that all citizens are equal in their right to participate in governance, that decisions should be made by counting heads rather than breaking them, and that the community as a whole is wiser than any individual within it. The implementation of this decision over the following months reveals the practical genius of the emerging polis system. Work crews are organized to build the ships, with each citizen contributing according to his abilities, some providing labor, others materials, still others technical expertise. The costs are shared through a system of taxation that is itself democratically determined, with the Assembly debating and voting on how much each citizen should contribute. The construction project becomes a school for citizenship, teaching the islanders how to work together for the common good while respecting individual rights and contributions. They learn to balance competing interests, to compromise when necessary, and to subordinate personal desires to collective needs. Most importantly, they discover that free men working together can accomplish things that seemed impossible when they worked alone. As word of their success spreads, delegations arrive from other communities seeking to join the Confederation. Each new member brings its own traditions and perspectives, forcing the Alliance to develop more sophisticated forms of governance. They create a council of representatives, establish procedures for making collective decisions, and develop laws that apply equally to all members, regardless of their size or wealth. This process of political innovation is occurring simultaneously throughout the Greek world. In the valleys of Attica, farming communities are banding together to form what will become the city-state of Athens. On the Peloponnese, the descendants of Mycenaean warriors are creating Sparta, with its unique blend of democratic and monarchical institutions. In the islands and coastal regions, trading communities are establishing the commercial city-states that will dominate Mediterranean commerce for centuries. Each of these emergent polis develops its own character and institutions, but all share certain fundamental features that distinguish them from earlier forms of government. They are based on the principle of citizenship rather than subjection, with free men participating directly in governance rather than simply obeying the commands of rulers. They are territorial rather than tribal, defining membership by residence and participation rather than by blood or clan affiliation. Most importantly, they are constitutional rather than arbitrary, governed by laws that apply to rulers and ruled alike. The religious dimension of this political revolution is equally important. The old Bronze Age gods, who were primarily concerned with supporting royal power and maintaining cosmic order, are being transformed into deities who protect the rights of citizens and promote justice in human affairs. Athena, the patron goddess of the Island Confederation, is no longer just a war goddess, but also the protector of wise counsel and fair deliberation. The temple where the assembly meets becomes a symbol of this new relationship between divine and human authority. Unlike the great palace sanctuaries of the Bronze Age, which emphasize the distance between gods and mortals, this simple shrine suggests that the divine can be found in the collective wisdom of free citizens deliberating together. The goddess does not dictate policy through oracles or priests, but inspires mortals to discover truth through rational discussion and democratic debate. As autumn arrives and the first ships of the Confederation begin their patrols, the success of the experiment becomes apparent. Pirate attacks decline dramatically as the raiders discover that they now face organized resistance rather than isolated victims. Trade increases as merchants gain confidence in the safety of the sea lanes. Most importantly, the participating communities discover that they can maintain their independence while cooperating for mutual benefit. The economic benefits of the Confederation extend far beyond mere security. The pooling of resources allows for larger and more ambitious projects than any single community could undertake alone. They establish common standards for weights and measures, facilitating trade between members. They create a system of commercial law that provides predictable rules for business transactions. They even begin minting coins, a revolutionary innovation that will transform Mediterranean commerce. These coins are themselves symbols of the new political order. Unlike the royal seals and palace tokens of the Bronze Age, which proclaimed the power of individual rulers, the coins of the Confederation bear images that represent the collective identity of the participating communities. Athena's owl, the olive branch of peace, the ship that symbolizes their maritime cooperation. The success of the island confederation inspires imitators throughout the Greek world. On the mainland, the emerging city-state of Athens adopts similar institutions, creating an assembly of citizens that meets regularly to debate public affairs. In the Peloponnese, Sparta develops its own unique form of mixed government, combining monarchical, aristocratic, and democratic elements. Throughout the islands and coastal regions, new polis emerge, each experimenting with different ways of organizing free communities. This proliferation of political experiments creates a laboratory for testing different approaches to governance. Some polis emphasize direct democracy, with all citizens participating in decision-making. Others develop representative systems, with elected officials speaking for different groups within the community. Still others create mixed constitutions that balance different sources of authority. The competition between these different systems drives continuous innovation and improvement. Successful institutions are copied and adapted by other communities, while failed experiments are abandoned. This evolutionary process gradually refines the art of governance, producing increasingly sophisticated and effective forms of democratic government. The cultural implications of this political revolution are equally profound. The emergence of the polis creates new forms of identity and loyalty that transcend family and clan affiliations. Citizens begin to think of themselves not just as members of particular households or tribes, but as participants in a larger political community with shared values and common purposes. This new civic identity finds expression in art, literature, and religious practice. Poets begin composing hymns that celebrate the virtues of good citizenship rather than just the deeds of individual heroes. Artists create works that glorify the community as a whole rather than just its rulers. Religious festivals become occasions for displaying civic unity and pride. The Olympic Games, which are revived during this period after centuries of neglect, become a powerful symbol of this new Greek identity. Athletes compete not just for personal glory, but as representatives of their home polis. The games create a sense of shared Greekness that transcends local loyalties while celebrating the diversity and competitive spirit that characterizes the polis system. As winter approaches and the assembly meets for its final session of the year, the citizens of the Island Confederation gather to reflect on what they have accomplished. In less than a year, they have transformed themselves from an isolated and vulnerable community into part of a powerful alliance that controls important sea lanes and influences events throughout the region. More importantly, they have discovered new ways of organizing human society that will influence the course of history for millennia to come. They have proven that free men can govern themselves effectively, that democracy can be both stable and dynamic, and that political communities based on consent rather than coercion can achieve remarkable things. The principles they have pioneered: citizenship, democracy, constitutionalism, and the rule of law will spread throughout the Greek world and eventually influence political development far beyond the Mediterranean. The Roman Republic will adapt Greek political ideas to govern a vast empire. Medieval city-states will rediscover Greek concepts of civic freedom. Modern democratic movements will draw inspiration from Greek examples of popular government. But perhaps most importantly, they have created a new understanding of human potential and dignity. In the Bronze Age world, most people were subjects who existed to serve the purposes of their rulers. In the emerging world of the polis, citizens are free agents who participate in shaping their own destiny and that of their community. As Solon, Cleisthenes, and Pericles make their way down the hill from Athena's temple, they carry with them the satisfaction of having participated in something truly historic. They have helped to create not just a new form of government, but a new way of being human as free citizens of a free community, responsible for their own fate and capable of achieving greatness through collective action. The stars are beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The same constellations that guided their Bronze Age ancestors across unknown seas. But now these descendants have found something even more valuable than new lands or treasure. They have discovered how to create political communities worthy of free human beings. The polis has been born, and with it, the foundation of Western civilization. The long journey from the collapse of the Bronze Age kingdoms to the emergence of democratic city-states is complete. The Greeks have not just survived the Dark Age. They have used it as an opportunity to create something entirely new and revolutionary. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and new opportunities. The Confederation will grow and evolve, facing tests that will require all the wisdom and courage its citizens can muster. Other polis will rise to challenge their dominance, forcing them to adapt and improve their institutions. The wider world will take notice of these Greek experiments in self-government, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with hostility. But tonight, as the citizens of this small island community settle into their homes, they can take pride in knowing that they have participated in one of the most important developments in human history. They have helped to invent democracy, and in doing so, they have changed the world forever. The great hall of the palace at Ithaca echoes with the sound of the lyre as the evening's entertainment begins. But this is not the Ithaca of Bronze Age legend, nor the palace of the mythical Odysseus. This is the 8th century BCE, and the modest megaron where the island's nobles gather belongs to a local chieftain who claims descent from the legendary hero. The man who strikes the lyre strings is Homer, not yet the legendary poet whose name will echo through eternity, but a wandering bard whose blindness has sharpened his memory and whose gift for song has made him welcome in halls throughout the Greek world. Homer's appearance is unremarkable, a man of middle years, his hair streaked with gray, his eyes clouded by the darkness that has been his companion since childhood. But when he begins to sing, something magical happens. His voice, trained by decades of practice, fills the hall with power and beauty. His fingers, guided by instinct and long experience, coax melodies from the lyre that seem to come from the gods themselves. Most importantly, his mind, freed from the distractions of sight, holds within it the accumulated wisdom and artistry of generations of bards. Tonight, Homer will perform something unprecedented, not just the traditional songs of heroes and gods that his audiences expect, but a new kind of epic poem that will transform Greek literature and influence storytelling for all time. He has spent years crafting this work, weaving together ancient legends, historical memories, and his own poetic genius to create the Iliad, the story of Achilles, Rage, and the fall of Troy. The audience that gathers to hear him represents the full spectrum of 8th century Greek society. There are nobles who trace their lineage back to Mycenaean kings, merchants whose ships carry goods throughout the Mediterranean, farmers whose olive groves and vineyards provide the island's wealth, and craftsmen whose skills in bronze and iron working are essential to the community's prosperity. All have come to hear the blind bard whose reputation for storytelling has spread throughout the Greek world. As Homer begins his recitation, his audience is immediately transported to a world both familiar and strange. The heroes he describes, Achilles, Hector, Agamemnon, Odysseus, are names they know from generations of bardic tradition. But Homer's treatment of these figures is revolutionary in its psychological depth and moral complexity. These are not the simple warrior heroes of earlier songs, but complex human beings struggling with conflicting loyalties, overwhelming emotions, and impossible choices. Sing, goddess. The rage of Achilles, son of Peleus, Homer begins, his voice rising and falling with the ancient rhythms that have been passed down through centuries of oral tradition. That murderous anger which condemned Achaeans to countless agonies, hurled many valiant souls of heroes into Hades' house, left their bodies to be devoured by dogs and all birds of prey, and the will of Zeus was accomplished. These opening lines establish the epic's central themes: the destructive power of unchecked emotion, the terrible cost of war, and the mysterious workings of divine will in human affairs. But they also introduce something new to Greek literature, a moral ambiguity that reflects the complex realities of 8th century life rather than the simpler, heroic ideals of the Bronze Age. As Homer continues his recitation, describing the quarrel between Achilles and Agamemnon that sets the epic's plot in motion, his audience recognizes issues that resonate with their own experience. The conflict between individual honor and collective responsibility, the tension between personal desires and public duty, the difficulty of maintaining unity in the face of competing interests. These are the challenges that face every Greek polis as it struggles to balance freedom with order, excellence with equality. The character of Achilles, in particular, embodies the contradictions of the emerging Greek ideal. He is the greatest of warriors, capable of superhuman feats of courage and skill. But he is also proud, impulsive, and ultimately self-destructive. His rage against Agamemnon leads him to withdraw from battle, allowing his fellow Greeks to suffer devastating defeats. His love for his friend Patroclus drives him to return to combat, but also to commit acts of savage brutality that horrify even his allies. Through Achilles, Homer explores the dark side of the heroic ideal that dominates Greek culture. The pursuit of excellence, arete, and honor, time that motivates Greek heroes, can lead to greatness, but it can also lead to tragedy. The competitive spirit that drives individuals to achieve extraordinary things can also tear communities apart if it is not balanced by wisdom and moderation. The Trojan heroes, particularly Hector, provide a counterpoint to the Greek emphasis on individual glory. Hector fights not for personal honor, but to defend his city, his family, and his people. He embodies the civic virtues that are becoming increasingly important in the world of the polis: loyalty, responsibility, and sacrifice for the common good. Yet even Hector is flawed, driven by pride and honor to make choices that ultimately doom his city. As the night progresses and Homer moves through the epic's 24 books, his audience experiences the full range of human emotion. They weep with Priam as he begs Achilles for the body of his son Hector. They rage with Achilles as he learns of Patroclus' death. They feel the terror of battle and the grief of loss, the joy of victory and the bitterness of defeat. But Homer's genius lies not just in his ability to evoke emotion, but in his capacity to find meaning in suffering. The Iliad is ultimately a meditation on mortality, on what it means to be human in a world where death is inevitable and glory is fleeting. The heroes know that they will die, but they choose to live and fight anyway, creating meaning through their actions, even in the face of ultimate futility. This existential dimension of the epic reflects the spiritual crisis of 8th century Greece. The old Bronze Age certainties, the divine right of kings, The protection of palace gods, the stability of hierarchical society have collapsed. The Greeks of Homer's time must create their own meaning, their own values, their own reasons for living and dying. The Iliad provides a framework for this existential quest, showing how individuals can achieve a kind of immortality through excellence and how communities can find purpose through shared struggle. The religious dimension of the epic is equally complex. The gods of the Iliad are not the distant, incomprehensible deities of Bronze Age religion, but anthropomorphic beings who embody human passions and conflicts on a cosmic scale. Zeus struggles to maintain order among the quarreling. Olympians, just as human leaders, struggle to maintain unity among their followers. Athena and Aphrodite represent competing values, wisdom versus passion, duty versus desire that humans must balance in their own lives. This humanization of the gods reflects the democratizing tendencies of 8th century Greek society. Just as political authority is being transferred from kings to citizens, religious authority is being transferred from priests to poets. Homer and his fellow bards become the theologians of the new age, using their artistic gifts to explore the nature of divinity and its relationship to human life. The technical achievement of the Iliad is as remarkable as its artistic and philosophical content. Homer has created a work of unprecedented length and complexity, while maintaining the oral tradition's emphasis on memorability and performance. The epic's formulaic language repeated. Epithets like swift-footed Achilles and rosy-fingered Dawn serves not just as mnemonic aids, but as a kind of poetic grammar that allows for infinite variation. Within a stable framework, the meter of the epic dactylic hexameter creates a rhythm that is both majestic and flexible, capable of expressing everything from the fury of battle to the tenderness of human love. Homer's use of similes, particularly the extended comparisons that scholars call epic similes, creates a rich texture of imagery that connects the heroic world of the poem to the everyday experience of its audience. As dawn approaches and Homer concludes his recitation with Hector's funeral, his audience sits in stunned silence. They have experienced something unprecedented, a work of art that combines entertainment with education, tradition with innovation, local concerns with universal themes. The Iliad is both a product of its time and a timeless masterpiece that will speak to audiences across the centuries. But Homer is not finished. Over the following nights, he will perform his other great epic, the Odyssey, which tells the story of Odysseus's long journey home from Troy. If the Iliad is about war and its consequences, the Odyssey is about peace and the challenges of rebuilding civilization after conflict. If the Iliad explores the tragic dimensions of human existence, the Odyssey celebrates the comic possibilities of human ingenuity and resilience. The Odyssey's hero is very different from Achilles, where Achilles is a warrior whose strength lies in his ability to kill. Odysseus is a survivor whose strength lies in his ability to adapt. He is Polytropos, the man of many turns, many tricks, many faces. He represents the kind of intelligence and flexibility that the Greeks of Homer's time need to navigate their complex and rapidly changing world. The structure of the Odyssey is as innovative as its characterization. Instead of the linear narrative of the Iliad, the Odyssey uses a complex pattern of flashbacks, parallel plots, and interwoven stories that reflects the sophisticated storytelling techniques that are emerging in 8th century Greek culture. The epic begins in the middle of the action, with Odysseus trapped on Calypso's island, then moves back and forth in time to reveal the full scope of his adventures. This narrative complexity serves a deeper purpose. The Odyssey is not just the story of one man's journey, but an exploration of what it means to be Greek in the post-Bronze Age world. Odysseus's wanderings take him to the edges of the known world, where he encounters peoples and customs that challenge his assumptions about civilization and barbarism. Order and chaos, home and exile. The monsters and magical beings that Odysseus encounters, the Cyclops, The sirens, Circe, the lotus eaters, represent the forces of chaos and unreason that threaten civilized life. But they also represent aspects of human nature that must be acknowledged and controlled. The Cyclops Polyphemus embodies brute force without intelligence. The sirens represent the seductive power of art and knowledge that can lead to destruction if not properly managed. Circe symbolizes the transformative power of desire that can either elevate or degrade human beings. Through these encounters, Odysseus learns the lessons that the Greeks of Homer's time are learning, that civilization is fragile and must be constantly defended, that intelligence and adaptability are more valuable than brute strength, that the greatest victories are often won through self-control rather than violence. The theme of homecoming that dominates the Odyssey resonates powerfully with Homer's audience. Many of them are descendants of refugees from the Bronze Age collapse, people whose families have spent generations trying to rebuild what was lost. The epic's emphasis on the value of home, family, and community speaks to their deepest longings and aspirations. But the Odyssey also recognizes that homecoming is never simple. Odysseus returns to find his palace overrun by suitors who are consuming his wealth and threatening his family. Ithaca itself has been corrupted by their presence, its social order disrupted, its values perverted. The hero must not only reclaim his home but restore its moral foundation. The climactic scene in which Odysseus, disguised as a beggar, strings his great bow and slaughters the suitors is both a thrilling adventure story and a profound meditation on justice and restoration. The hero's victory is not just personal, but social. He restores proper order to his community and reestablishes the values that make civilized life possible. As Homer completes his performance of both epics over the course of several nights, he has accomplished something unprecedented in Greek culture. He has created works of art that serve multiple functions: entertainment for aristocratic audiences, education for future generations, religious instruction for a society seeking new forms of spiritual meaning, and political commentary for communities struggling with the challenges of self-governance. The impact of Homer's achievement extends far beyond the immediate audience in the hall at Ithaca. His epics will be memorized and performed by bards throughout the Greek world, creating a shared cultural heritage that helps to define Greek identity. They will be among the first works written down when the Greeks adopt the Phoenician alphabet, ensuring their preservation for future generations. They will become the foundation of Greek education, teaching young people the values and ideals that their society holds dear. Most importantly, Homer's epics will establish poetry as a form of knowledge equal to philosophy, history, and science. The bard's claim to divine inspiration, his invocation of the quotient of the bards, muse at the beginning of each epic, is not just a literary convention but a serious assertion that artistic creation can reveal truths about human existence that are not accessible through rational analysis alone. This elevation of poetry to the status of wisdom literature will have profound consequences for Greek culture. It will inspire generations of poets to tackle the great themes of human existence: love and death, war and peace, justice and injustice, fate and freedom. It will establish the principle that art should not just entertain, but also educate and inspire. It will create the expectation that great literature should grapple with the deepest questions of human existence. As Homer takes his leave from Ithaca, his lyre slung across his shoulder and his staff in his hand, he carries with him the satisfaction of having created something that will outlast the bronze and stone monuments of kings and conquerors. His words, preserved in the memories of those who heard them and eventually written down for posterity, will continue to speak to audiences across the centuries. The blind bard cannot see the sunrise that illuminates his path as he makes his way to the harbor where a ship waits to carry him to his next performance. But he can sense the dawn of a new age in Greek culture, an age when the power of words will rival the power of swords. when the achievements of artists will be celebrated alongside those of warriors, when the human imagination will be recognized as one of the greatest forces in the universe. Behind him, in the hall where he performed, his audience continues to discuss the stories they have heard. They debate the choices made by Achilles and Hector, Odysseus and Penelope. They argue about the meaning of the gods' actions and the lessons to be drawn from the heroes' fates. In doing so, they are participating in the birth of literary criticism, philosophy, and the entire tradition of humanistic inquiry that will become one of Greece's greatest gifts to the world. The songs of Homer have been sung, and they will echo through the ages, inspiring countless other poets, thinkers, and dreamers to explore the depths of human experience and the heights of human possibility. The foundation of Greek literature has been laid, and upon it will rise the magnificent edifice of classical culture that will influence the world for millennia to come. As our journey through the birth of Greek civilization draws to a close, we find ourselves standing on the threshold of one of history's most remarkable transformations. The year is 700 BCE, and across the scattered islands and rocky peninsulas of the Greek world, something unprecedented is stirring a civilization that will give humanity democracy and philosophy. Tragedy and comedy, the Olympic Games and the scientific method dot from the ashes of the Bronze Age collapse. The Greeks have created something entirely new. They have learned to govern themselves through assemblies of free citizens rather than submitting to the will of kings. They have developed new forms of art and literature that explore the depths of human experience with unprecedented sophistication. They have begun to ask questions about the nature of reality, justice, and the good life that will occupy philosophers for millennia to come. The seeds planted in these early centuries will soon bear extraordinary fruit. Within a few generations, Greek traders and colonists will carry their culture throughout the Mediterranean, establishing cities from Spain to the Black Sea. Greek philosophers will begin the systematic investigation of the natural world, laying the foundations for mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Greek dramatists will create theatrical forms that still move audiences today. Greek historians will invent the discipline of historical inquiry, seeking to understand the causes and patterns of human events. The political innovations of the early polis will evolve into the radical democracy of classical Athens, where ordinary citizens will participate directly in governing one of the ancient world's greatest powers. The military innovations of the hoplite phalanx will enable small Greek city-states to defeat the vast armies of the Persian Empire, preserving the independence that makes their cultural achievements possible. But perhaps most importantly, the Greeks will develop a new understanding of human potential and dignity. They will create the concept of the individual as a rational, creative being capable of excellence in multiple spheres of activity. They will establish the principle that human beings can understand their world through reason and improve it through effort. They will demonstrate that free people, working together, can achieve things that seemed impossible to earlier generations. The story we have, told from Theron's first voyage across the Aegean to Homer's great epics, is the story of how this remarkable civilization came to be. It is a tale of courage and creativity, of adaptation and innovation, of the endless human capacity to create meaning and beauty, even in the face of uncertainty and loss. The Bronze Age palaces with their rigid hierarchies and divine kings have given way to democratic assemblies, where free citizens debate the issues of the day. The simple pottery that first captured Theron's imagination has evolved into artistic masterpieces that combine technical perfection with profound emotional expression. The scattered tribes of the Dark Age have become a network of independent city-states united by shared language, culture, and values. Most remarkably, the Greeks have learned to see themselves as the authors of their own destiny. They no longer wait passively for gods or kings to determine their fate. but take active responsibility for creating the kind of society they want to live in. This shift from passive acceptance to active engagement is perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of Greek civilization, the idea that human beings can and should shape their own world. As we take our leave of this ancient world, we can see in the distance the golden age that is about to dawn. The Parthenon will rise on the Athenian Acropolis, its perfect proportions embodying the Greek ideal of harmony and balance. The tragedies of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides will explore the eternal themes of human existence with unmatched power and insight. The philosophy of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle will establish the foundations of Western thought, but all of these achievements rest on the foundations laid in the centuries we have explored. The courage of Bronze Age traders who first ventured across unknown seas. The resilience of Dark Age communities that preserved Greek culture through its darkest hour. The wisdom of early polis founders who invented new forms of government. And the genius of bards like Homer who transformed ancient stories into timeless art. The civilization that began with a pottery shard washing up on a Bronze Age beach has become one of humanity's greatest achievements. The Greeks have shown that human beings are capable of creating societies based on freedom rather than force. Art that captures the full range of human experience, and ideas that can illuminate the deepest mysteries of existence. Their legacy lives on in every democratic assembly, every scientific experiment, every work of art that seeks to capture truth and beauty. Every individual who refuses to accept that things must remain as they have always been. The Greek spirit, that unique combination of curiosity, courage, and creativity, continues to inspire those who believe in the possibility of human progress and the power of human reason. As the stars wheel overhead in their eternal patterns, the same constellations that guided ancient Greek sailors across the wine-dark sea, we can hear the echo of voices from across the millennia, the voice of Theron marveling at foreign pottery, of Ariadne dancing with the sacred bull, of Agamemnon dreaming of glory, of Demodocus preserving the songs of heroes, of the citizens of early Peleus debating their common future, and of Homer singing of rage and homecoming, war and peace, mortality and the quest for meaning. These voices remind us that the story of Greek civilization is ultimately the story of human potential, of what people can achieve when they dare to question, to explore, to create, and to dream. It is a story that began over 3,000 years ago on the shores of the Aegean Sea, but it continues today wherever human beings strive to build better societies, create meaningful art, and understand their place in the cosmos. The dawn that broke over ancient Greece still illuminates our world, and its light will continue to shine as long as human beings value freedom, beauty, truth, and the endless possibility of becoming more than they were before. In that sense, the birth of Greek civilization is not just a historical event, but an ongoing process, one in which we all participate whenever we choose reason over prejudice, dialogue over violence, and hope over despair. The journey is complete, but the story continues. For the Greek spirit, once awakened, can never truly die. It lives on in every generation that refuses to accept limits on human potential, in every individual who dares to think new thoughts and dream new dreams, in every community that chooses to govern itself through reason and justice rather than force and fear. Sleep well, dear listeners, and dream of marble temples gleaming in the Mediterranean sun, of ships with painted eyes sailing toward unknown horizons, of assemblies where free citizens debate the great questions of their time, and of poets whose words capture the eternal truths of human existence. For in your dreams, the ancient world lives again, and the spirit of Greece continues its eternal journey toward the light. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey through the birth of Greek civilization. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more nightly adventures through history's most fascinating periods. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with the wisdom and wonder of the ancient world.